It does not matter how many times I look at FF7 Remake, new, crazy, mind-blowing, juicy-ass possibilities for this story are just constantly emerging, all that get me more and more hype than the previous, and today I want to discuss a theory with you guys. So I think it's clear to say that in a Final Fantasy VII Remake, there's a lot of inconsistencies. Not the kind of poorly written ones. I'm talking about the juicy, intentionally, what the fuck are you doing, Square? Kind of inconsistencies that are constantly there to get the player questioning things, setting off alarm bells, warnings. Not everything is as it seems. And some of them are so obvious, especially with like Aerith. Straight up dropping details about stuff that she isn't supposed to know yet. I mean, literally Tifa asking her, what are you not telling us? Completely bizarre happenings like Sephiroth freezing Aerith mid-go and so many others that I've covered in my theories that are utterly trippy, but for as many obvious ones, there are also a ton of so subtle. Peeking and creeping from just behind the hedge, popping his head out and saying, hello. Shit's not real. I mean, well, it is real, but a few of those are just things like deja vu, for example. So many of the characters have had them. I think Wedge was a really strong one where he knew the plate collapse was going to happen. He was saying, I've just got this sense. I've always said the way that the characters are coming to trust each other so much faster. Like at a totally breakneck speed, especially with Nanaki. And as for the number of strange lines and hints and oh god, the double meanings, they're littered all over the place. And it all makes a lot of sense because, if you've seen my theories, I'm just going to dive straight in the deep end. Hopefully you've seen most of them, or a lot of them. Now, it's quite clear that Sephiroth has come from the future. He's harvested the Terra Corrupt from post-Advent children. I really want to emphasize this again. This is how Sephiroth empowers himself. He is a memory parasite because that is what the Livestream is. Bugenhagen, he's explained it to us in OG. Everything has its natural cycle, and then the experiences, the lessons, the life lived is reabsorbed by the planet, and that goes on to become the Livestream. This is what Sephiroth is trying to steal for himself. This is what he is corrupted. The fundamental sanctity of memory. And what is really important to remember, because it's the entire crux of this story, is this memory is a finite resource. Hence Shinra draining it is an issue. It's not limitless like Shinra's propaganda wants people to believe. So essentially in the universe of FF7, and this is why I'm going to call this the Reincarnation Theory, is that's kind of how the world works in this game. A soul returns to the planet and from it another one is born. Now, whether that is a like for like a literal reincarnation. Tifa has had many incarnations up and down the timeline, like she's a shard, but I mean, one can bloody hope. Only thing better than one Tiefs and all that. But what I want to propose, and it's following a similar vein to my dream space theory. Dream space that has covered why there's all these kind of semi-illusory inconsistencies in the game, like Sephiroth freezing Aerith, why the failed clones of Sephiroth and Genova are so much more empowered, like they're so much better at teleporting around, plus Cloud's hallucinations are so much stronger, so the Genova cells in him, plus his combat prowess, all things that would get empowered if, just like I said, Terra Corrupt was far stronger in this story than it was in OG. Why there's all these really strange things like the cats which in dream esoteric interpretation are there to show when you are being led astray from your path. That's what the cat symbolizes. And they always popped up at moments that things were happening differently in the remake versus OG. And that's the thing I want to make very clear, or I want to assume, is because Square have put so much attention into ensuring there is a reason for everything that is different from OG. Everything either has this symbolic imagery flourish in the game, or it's represented with a yellow flower or a purple flower, or it's always accompanied with an odd line to it to explain why things might be different this time around. And what I stumbled across the other day, and I've got to thank Dashing David for this really confirmed it, because in my Dream Space theories I was utterly convinced that the structure of Midgar had changed. From the Midgar that we play in the game, where the reactor layouts are different, the structure of the city is different. I kept saying how the Seventh Heaven sign was damaged differently, but Dashing David more or less straight up confirmed that there are two different Midgars, guys. Two different Midgars, that Square have intentionally designed them that way to give us this tip-off. So before the singularity event, so before the team crossed through the portal of Destiny's Crossroads, this is Midgar, and the main things to note here is the expansion happening outside of the wall. Like there's actual buildings and houses and cities and towers outside, and if we look at the reactors, we can see that the kanji and the number of the reactor is in the same shade, kind of just like a teal greenish sort of color consistent on both the backdrops. Then we go to the singularity Midgar when a cloud is floating down. We get a clear shot over it, and different layout. Completely. There is no building on the outside of Midgar anymore. It's blank. It's like they've started laying the foundations, but no society, no people have actually started to occupy and populate that area. And we go to the reactors, the kanji is in a different shade to the number. It's got a different backdrop to it. Now, that might seem simple. Maybe they just designed them in different developments in the game. Nah, man, nah, because that's OG. That's how they designed it in OG FF7. Only the beginning of construction happening around the outskirts, the kanji layout. So we went from whatever the fuck kind of Midgar we were playing in to OG, which is very much backed up by the original stamp bag crisp packet. So that leaves a lot of questions to be asked. Why is it that way? Why has the structure changed? Why is Midgar different? And I'm just going to give you some of my best theories. So the first one really ties into the dream space concept in the sense that I believe Sephiroth used the power in the future that he had harvested from corrupted memory to re-infiltrate the lifestream. Maybe he had acquired enough from the geostigma, from the constant sowing seeds of despair, which is how Sephiroth corrupts and Jenova corrupts memory, is they play on things like fear, anger, hurt, resentment. All of this was laid out to us by Aerith many times throughout the compilation. A huge one is desire. Sephiroth corrupts and twists people's natural desires, and what I've kind of headcanoned is he's used this power to re-infiltrate back into the plot, I strongly now believe, at the point of the alleyway. Hence why we had the sort of purple hue of the vending machine in the back to represent the colour association with Seth. Aerith sharply looks. I know this happened in OG, but the slight difference was with the orchestra. It had both a male and a female sort of back and forth to it, which I strongly believe represents Aerith and Sephiroth both coming back into the story at this point. Because this is all happening in the live stream, or in what I'm going to dub a memory membrane complex. Yeah, memory membrane complex. I think that's what all of Midgar is. And if I could describe this, it's similar to a Zanarkand, aka a reality that is constructed by a cognitive attribute, except for instead of dreams, it is just fundamentally what the live stream is, memory. Actually, although I suppose thinking about it, that is pretty much how Zanarkand worked. The faith recreated from their own previous memories, the point of time in which they all lived, which would work very similar to how I'm theorizing this. And again, what with the FF10 and 7 remake links coming out the arse, especially in the train graveyard, the dissolving sound effects of the ghost, the hymn of the faith tied into the theme, Najeemi's constant reaffirmation, and again the Easter egg in F7 remake, that these universes are connected, and yes, they can just be Easter eggs, but fundamentally, I think the takeaway we're supposed to get is the universal law and mechanics of this universe are very similar. Similar enough to create that association, and that's why I believe Sephiroth has learned to open pathways within the livestream, quite clearly shown to us by him cutting a hole through Destiny. You think he learned that on the spot then there. That man, he's known that ability. He has perfected his ability to essentially cut his way through different points of the live stream. And that's not speculation. Square Enix straight up told us in the Automania, in this space after we follow, we are in the live stream. An area that, yes, while it has some crazy wild happenings going on to it, like the wall and the floor, which is the main hint of the live stream, it always has been in the compilation. But to Cloud and the gang, it seems so tangible, it seems so real, like they don't even really skip a beat in this space. Straight up Barrett says, everything looks normal to me. But that place where we fight the Harbinger, that was in the live stream, hence why it had the same pattern design as we've seen throughout the series. Even before Crisis, original FF7, the sort of tiled, checkered pattern regions, We were in the live stream, man. Although I think it may be more accurate to say close to the heart of the planet, a term that we've heard a few times throughout the compilation, and we heard it in the FF7 remake with Jessie's dad being in the coma. That's where Biggs said that his consciousness was, which I think is another subtle hint about what's actually happening in our game. I'll quickly add another person who went into a coma. By default, similar to Jessie's dad, don't know if they have any relevance, but Shalua Rai. Rui? Is it Shalua Ri? No. The Dirge of Cerberus Doctor. We had a cliffhanger on her when we saw her tank flash up the end that she had gone into a coma, but I really think this could tie into and explain Cloud's Mako poisoning and the very odd time frame that the FF7 remake starts from that Square Enix have significantly changed, but I'll cover that later in the video. But yeah, is it really that nonsensical or impossible that this alternative Midgar that is different from OG may be just as fake or as non-reality or as much a cognitive realm produced by a drastic alteration in the live stream if, yeah, by Barrett's own words, it seemed completely normal to him? It's kind of proof that the live stream can create a really realistic non-reality. And how mechanically this may have come about, like the potential logic of it is, I'm imagining like Sephiroth, he had all of this Terra corrupted version of Livestream, so he had a tremendous amount of power. And in knowing that he is permanently tethered to Cloud and in, never just be a memory and is in need of his power. But of course, after Advent Children realized he could never convert Cloud, that Cloud had become too at peace with himself. He'd gone through his redemption arc, so he had to come back to a point where he would be able to break Cloud, and therefore everything that Sephiroth and Genova had stored up in terms of Livestream juices, the souls that had gone on to their side versus Aerith and Gaia's and Minerva's, he spent that energy to reopen the Livestream timeline, kind of like going back to a chapter in a book, because yeah, all memory is recorded in the Livestream. And if he used negative Livestream to restart that cycle, he would by default be bringing the desires, the lessons, the evolved souls from the future that had experienced that future timeline. He'd be bringing it back, which explains the flash forwards, explains the deja vu of our characters. The knowingness, the instinct, the intuition. Of course, it's no stronger than it is in Aerith, because she's a highly intuitive being and because she's a guardian of the planet, absolutely. Gaia kept Zack and Aerith individualized in the live stream. That's a rare occurrence. So I always see that as absolute proof they were like chosen ones, which then makes a great deal of sense why the last thing before Destiny broke that it would do was to bring back one of the Guardians. I was gonna say, this plus talking about Sephiroth cutting through corridors of darkness, a doorway that Aerith has to purify, which is essentially putting the Darkness Power Ranger suits on the TV. This is all very Kingdom Hearts bullshit. No, you were right, guys. All the haters were right, Nomura. What have you done? I'm kidding, I love it. Yeah, all of the desires, all of the regrets that he harvested from the future, and they would have been from characters that we significantly know who would have died. People like Jessie, who was in the live stream. People like Wedge, people like Biggs, and I did that whole breakdown of how desires are very clearly enhanced and playing for significant reasons. Tifa saving Cloud from falling. Nomura straight pointed to that scene as a direct response to her regret of seeing Cloud fall before. Harvested regret, I said it very much with Reeve. Reeve regretting the plate drop, trying to stop it happening. Barrett exposing President Shinra. Aerith wanting Zack to be alive. Jessie actually making a move on Cloud this time. Like these are very clearly different from the original, and I feel it is all for a reason. What I kind of noticed with this reincarnation theory is it would make so much sense, not only because Square Enix have so often used this subject in their games that their entire plots have been based around, but it would kind of also explain the importance of why Aerith had to break Destiny and why she was saying things like, once we do this, we'll be changing ourselves. Maybe that's why I hesitated. Why when she said every time the whispers touch me, I lose something, a part of myself. It's like she's the one who's viscerally feeling the transition, and she's the only one to recognize the loss of her memories, her previous self, her previous being and life, whereas the others are all oblivious to it. She can feel the rewriting effect happening. It makes sense why earlier on, I know she says something similar to OG, but when she looks at Midgar, Aerith sees not a horrible city that's got a steel plate above it. She says she loves it because she sees it as this big web of everybody's like dreams and aspirations, and it's like this collective construct of like humans' desires and aspirations, and she sees that as something beautiful. That's why later at the Destiny Crossings she says, all these moments and memories, precious and fleeting, they're like rain rolling off his back. Like that's what Sephiroth has violated in opening this this other happening, this other Midgar. Is, I reckon he's essentially brought the souls back in, and Aerith says, but this isn't the way it's supposed to be, because similar to the dating scene when she was with Cloud, and she said that life is fleeting, impermanent, and because of that we should make the most of every moment. Aerith is talking about the finite but beautiful experience of every person's reincarnation cycle. Like a life is only supposed to be lived in that one life cycle, in that one moment. We're born, we have our experiences, we learn our lessons, we go through whatever spiritual upgrade we're supposed to in this life, and then we return to the planet to nurture further life down the line. But if Sephiroth has essentially now pulled all the souls back into a non-reality to relive, there's kind of like something that is like deeply sad and unfair about it, because these souls, now another line I'll quickly point out is when they've said those born into this world who lived and who died, who returned, they're howling in pain. Now of course she's referencing the whispers, and no, Cloud asks what because of Sephiroth, and she more or less confirms it. So by Aerith's own definition, these are individual souls who at some point existed in FF7, and that's really trippy, man, because that means behind every single one of these whispers is an identity that could be, I mean, pretty much anyone. Like legit, this is Nomura 101. Anything that has a black cloaked figurey fucking hood, there's an identity beneath it. And that's why I think the concept of the reincarnation cycle and the whispers, it kind of doubles and overlaps quite nicely, because not only do I think the pain being referred to in that line, and it has it for the whisper, I think it has a double meaning for the individuals replaying this FF7 remake loop again. Tifa and Cloud, their pain is much more profound. What's kind of cool, or should I say very harrowing about this just a theory, is it mean these poor souls who are back here again, and you know any soul in a life cycle wants to naturally fulfill its karmic duty, what it's here to do, and if that's been amplified, then that is pushing and excelling characters to try to resolve their negative karmic cycles more. And I could see that like with Jessie, like her determination to find out why the bomb killed so many more people, why it was larger, getting down to the bottom of that karmic hang up, you know, one that in the Maiden Who Travels Through the Planet, Aerith had to release her from and had to guide her through. But now because of Sephiroth, and I think why Aerith thinks he's so wrong and has to be stopped, and why she broke Destiny, she's now been forced back into this life there to try to do it again. But of course the planet does not want those events to change, fate, destiny, and is using the whispers to prevent any people who would change the timeline. So that's kind of rough, because like the characters aren't allowed to act on their natural intuitions now, which I think could be causing a great amount of suffering and pain in both for the Whispers and those who are alive in this story. And that, on a deeper sense, is the turmoil that Aerith had to deal with on how does she resolve that, and she chose to break it. Break the limitations of allowing these newborn reincarnated characters following their new amplified intuitions at the expense of a potentially world-threatening unknown outcome. That's the context of the boundless, terrifying freedom. In my head, anyway. And I'll quickly point out some other characters I've not mentioned. Maybe we could even see it like with Johnny, just some like the minor ones. Like Johnny is so much more determined to be Tifa's hero to the point the boy takes a beating. We got like Marco, the failed clone. He was a dude who just died lonely and sick with no one to take care of him. Maybe on a deeper level, that's what his character wanted, and then in this incarnation cycle, Tifa became that person for him in his memory membrane complex. I could even see maybe that's why the Wutai War is flaring up. Like Goddo, his regret and desire was not to have Wutai subjugated, that he hadn't have given up. He learned that in the OG timeline from Yuffie, and here we now have a Goddo who is actually willing to fight back against Shinra. Again, the same with the other Avalanche Cell members suddenly be pulled into this. Are they acting with extra determination to take Shinra down? And I know that all becomes because the Avalanche Cell is providing materia to Wutai, so that even begs the question, is Rufus Shinra even more determined to slight and stop his father? I could see that if there is a bit of future, post-Advent children Rufus in there, I could easily see why that's leading to a dissatisfaction with him taking the throne. Because Rufus, from that future timeline and his future stories, he really did evolve beyond just being a greedy little bastard, and that could be causing a real internal struggle. And that's why I could imagine when Aerith does her magic hand transference, that she's actually kind of not just showing them a glimpse of the future, but she's helping to settle the individual's karmic confusion in this reactivated cycle, like especially Nanaki, like how she calms him down. And what we know from OG Nanaki is that his main desire at the start, pre-meeting Cloud and the gang, was purely to protect Cosmo Canyon. That was it. Literally, that's why when we go to Cosmo Canyon, Bugenhagen takes Nanaki to see Seto to sort of settle that with him and to allow Nanaki the space and the realization to go with Cloud and the gang to save the larger home, the planet itself. Something Nanaki had no interest in. Now Aerith does this hand transfer. Red's along for the ride, like absolute full determination, like the rest of the group. They all are at the end, he just says straight up, you have my nose for this hunt. Maybe I'm getting really stupid with this one, but maybe my boy Greg, the Shinra grunt who disobeyed his commanding officers, thinking not to let the gates open and let the people evacuate. Maybe this time Greg was like, nah, fuck you, man. I'm doing what's right this time. And it makes this whole thing makes the remake so much more interesting to look back over. But what's really trippy about those whispers each being a soul, like maybe the two ghosts that were populating around Jessie before she died, was it 2 or was it 3? Like maybe it was like Biggs and Wedge, or maybe one of them was Jessie's father, like watching over her as her daughter died. This is goddamn trippy, but I think it's more or less confirmed, because think about it, at the end of part 1, when we're past the singularity and everything is being ripped up into the air by the purple tornadoes, everything is being undone. Literally a line that Sephiroth says, I think he says that all are bound to her. Interesting that it always refers to the planet as her. I think that ties into the whole sort of Minerva feminine form representing the planet and the will of the Livestream. I really do think Minerva Genesis, even if not directly, indirectly, should be represented as a third ideological faction in this story. They're just too important not to be there, and we've definitely seen that representation hinted at with the G-Cell stuff, but he says all about her, and should this world be unmade, so too shall her children. Now, there's probably a million interpretations of what this could mean, and I'd be interested to see what the original Japanese is. But that's a pretty funky line, superhero thing. And, what does he mean by this world? This world? This literal remake world? The Midgar with the larger plate expansion? That's my interpretation within the context of this particular theory, that literally if this version of the remake that has been reopened by Sephiroth, this chapter within the Livestream that has been recycled, should this one be unmade, then so too shall her children, so too will the futures of the characters. The events of their futures will be no more, and by definition their victory over Sephiroth will not be certain. That's how he can achieve victory. And I theorise that's why we're not just metaphorically seeing that their futures being unmade, basically into a new incarnation, but that's why we're literally seeing it being unmade. Actually torn up into the goddamn sky. Remember, Aerith sees Midgar as a collective representation of everyone's dreams, of their hopes, of their aspirations, of their memories. It's a collective consciousness, the way Aerith sees it. And if we've just visually seen it get reduced, and one way to interpret is we've just seen the collective pool, the collective consciousness, the bank of memory itself be reduced, and everything that those souls had contributed to it, what they had contributed, be unmade. So in this part of the theory, I'm suggesting that perhaps the Outer Ring literally had more souls. Again, literally Sephiroth had brought more Livestream from the future, corrupted Livestream, which is a violation. We see that, kind of with the whispers, it says they're from a future timeline, the one that are the remnants. Even within the Harbinger himself, it had that purple colour, and in Sephiroth forcing the crew to break that, not only just is physically the architecture, that extra supplementation on Midgar is being undone, but so too are the actual souls themselves. That's why we see the huge whisper tornado suddenly form behind cloud. This really isn't that out there a theme for FF7 in the case of like packing souls into one form to move them on to another, and that's the entire concept of what Chaos and Omega from Dirge of Cerberus was. You pack into Omega, ship them on across the cosmos to start life elsewhere. Where if we saw this breaking down process to essentially begin another cycle, there's going to be part 2, because one of those souls in that vortex had to be our boy Biggs, because when they turn into the golden showery Dinkelbergs, the little sparkly doodads that, and when we go to the orphanage and we see one of those little gold specks go into Biggs's body and it wakes him up. Therefore, he had to have been one of the Whispers, one of the ones collecting around Midgar, like what Zach oversaw, again, the collective dome, memory membrane complex. But of course, he's been unmade, his fate, his incarnation cycle, and this is where I got thinking of like Maximilian Dude's theory. And I kind of hope they do this, man. I hope they do it in like part of the remake. Like he said, what if we went to the Golden Saucer and we go to see the princess play or a Loveless play, and suddenly Jessie is one of the actresses there with her freaking father in the audience, and they have no remembrance of Avalanche. We're deviating right out into the freaking deep end now. This is just concepts, but I do like the idea that potentially all the characters have now been separated from their future cycle, one that was set in stone, that had to be set in stone by the planet. That's all been unmade, and that now the future of all of these characters are uncertain. The boundless terrifying freedom will be changing more than just fate, will be changing ourselves. And I love this idea because I think it opens a huge amount of freedom and possibility into the remake. They're free now to succeed in whole new, amazing, awesome ways, as well as fail in cataclysmic, disastrous new ways, and I'm up for that, man. So that's my first reason why Midgar is larger and it ties into this theory. The second one is a bit more straightforward and at the same time not, because what is the point of the ideology of reincarnation? The idea is that cycles happen again and again, and from each cycle new lessons are learned. The soul sort of evolves and upgrades, and as a collective, society sort of improves. It becomes more inclusive, it becomes more conscientious. They're born with a stronger moral compass, if you will. I think we see that sort of societal improvement in FF7 that just ties in nicely with this headcanon. Again, it could all be the remakification affecting all these changes, but I like this headcanon because, like Sector 7 for example, in original FF7 it felt like a dangerous place. There were a bunch of rascals and thugs and rapscallions about, a bit dangerous, a bit rapey. When Barrett gets us back, he shoots his gun to get those mofos out the bar, and we head over to places like the Honeybee Inn. There were like these loody boys like crawling and slobbering all over the place. Sector 5 I think was the most miserable. Like, everyone sort of like very closed off in their own world. Like, literally there's the lady who's just walking with her head down on the ground, and while Midgar did still have those kind of vibes, like there were still goons and thugs, and I definitely had moments where I felt like I wanted to duct tape my butthole shut. There feels like a much stronger other side to Midgar. Like Sector 7 for example, a much stronger sense of community. We see it with like Biggs even, like there's a neighborhood watch. People have pride for where they live. They have a neighborly sense of like helping each other. We especially see that at the end with the soup kitchen and all the people rallying together to sort of help rebuild. Sector 5 has like the orphanage, and again with the characters, another few like Song. I remember when Song, Reno and Rude had their scene after the plate got blown up, and you could see them guilt tripping. Like Rude was like, was that really necessary, boss? And Song makes a really interesting comment. He tries to play it off as like, oh, maybe this was balancing the scales killing all of the humans because of what we've done with the planet. Now, that seems like a very post-Advent Children's song again, because Rufus and the Turks legitimately came to recognize what they had done to the planet, the damage that they had caused, and that they wanted to make amends for it. I start even seeing like ridiculous like little moments, like say the Shinra middle manager in OG, he was just like straight up Avalanche, you're a bunch of assholes. And like Barrett just goes in on him. Now in like FF7 Remake, like they actually have like a little bit of a battle of ideas. They straight up facilitate a convo, like the middle manager especially like recognizes in Tifa. Damn, maybe they ain't bad, they actually came back to help me. It feels like a pressure cooker for all the ideologies of OG sort of getting risen to the surface. And I again like the way that this would tie into the law of the universe, what with memory like cycling and recycling through the planet, and how Sephiroth may have reopened this event with Livestream negative juices, but it's kind of like the first point, so This might be the second or third. But in terms of evolution, I'd say even we could look at like the technology. Yeah, because I feel like technology, along with the soul's evolution, does kind of go hand in hand, especially in FF7, because we see that technology is kind of associated naturally with the Livestream. We see it with Minerva. She has like all the clockwork constructs on her, and she's most likely the ones who developed the weapons. The planet developed the weapons, big mechanical technology beings. And I feel like technology evolving alongside this, what we've got, like this Ragnarok theme going on throughout FF7, like it's so integral, the cycle of destruction and rebirth. Like that's why the white and black materia even exist. They were created by Cetra, who knew about that polarity, that natural cycle of events and its importance. Again, that's why I'm saying it's not supposed to be this way. And we see even that in like Aerith artwork. We see the Cetra ones with the black robes on one side, the white robes on the other, and I like the red in the middle, and it's kind of got that black, white and red mage Final Fantasy parallel to it. But you know, that kind of symbolizes again these cycles and how they happen, and that's so tied in with like Cloud's association with Fenrir, not just like the bike and having it on his Advent Children outfit, but like being literally represented by the wolf in Advent Children. The wolf in Norse mythology, that when the anguish of battle reaches its peak, so like the most negativity, I think like the warriors of Fenrir, like they cry blood, and then you've got like the blood red moon, all symbology we've seen in the remake. Look at these blood tears coming off of this demonic looking, could be Fenrir thing on Aerith's wall art, where the blood lands. Purple flowers are sprouting in that spot, and all throughout Advent Children, wherever Cloud had his most emotional trip outs, we would see the wolf. And yeah, this Ragnarok cycle, each time it happens, the warriors, they go into Valhalla, they regale their tales, they go through this cyclical experience. And the reason this ties in with the technology is we saw in like OG, I would say like the evolution of the Cetra, they started as like these ancient Egyptians, sort of like primitive looking from the wall murals. Then we've got the nomadic kind, and we saw that like, they had airships. Yeah, they had airships. And then we see the cycle break down with the 8 stone pillars obviously being a reflection of Midgar. I really think that's Square Enix showing us this is a conceptual parallel of Midgar and how the technology has evolved alongside this cyclical timeline. Now, while we did have things like the VR in Crisis Core, the VR in Remake seems way more powerful and widely used. It was kind of only used for soldier training. Now people can use it just when they're visiting the museum, and that sort of interacts, again, I think with Cloud's amplified Genova cells, hence the part of the VR where it flashed to purple and took Cloud into the apocalyptic version of Midgar where he could not tell the difference. Again, another hint of corrupted Livestream interfacing with an illusory memory complex. But outside of that, just even the rest of the technology as a whole, like in the museum, there's like actually like hologram or like flat screen wall TVs that are far beyond the old 18-inch chunk boxes that we see in OG. Yeah, sure, maybe it's just because we've moved past 1997, but what this remake has taught me, what seeing Sephiroth's wing in that wall art, is just don't assume remakification with Square. Taking things at their literal face value may actually be closer to the truth, but I was thinking the urban planning of Midgar seems a bit more complex and advanced, like the highways and byways. I know Nomura said that they didn't really get to explore the upper plate in OG, so they wanted to do it this time, but we do see a bit more of a complex design to Midgar, which could also tie into a lot of people who've said that the reactor layouts are different. I chalk this all to remakification, but if it weren't for, again, those two Midgar things, I think this could all be a part of an explanation as to why Midgar we were in is more evolved with an outer ring with more structures and buildings. And I think that cyclical evolution is kind of even tied in with the secret boss at the end of the remake. Pride and Joy is an early prototype of a weapon that in OG was Proudclod, and that was only built when after the weapons had come out of the planet. Why has development started so much sooner? And no, does that even time with like Chadley? Like, yeah, an AI. AI is pretty advanced tech, right? Suddenly Hojo has an AI assistant, one that by data mining Cloud says is able to find a semblance of freedom. Again, I believe through Cloud he sort of detects the non-reality that they are all existing. That's why I believe Chadley says that. But yeah, all of that is tied in with obviously Pride and Joy gives you the Gotterdammerang artifact, which is a take on the Norse story. So technology is the third thing I think is hinting at an incarnation logic in this game. I just want to take that to its furthest conclusion. And you guys might have heard me say this. I think this is the perfect ending for FF7 Remake. The most foregone conclusion of humanity evolving alongside technology, with humanity having a love for home and the Cetra having a duty to the planet. Again, it's all Neo Midgar, man. 2 words, Reeve. Neo frickin' Midgar. If at the end of FF7, and I don't know if that could be like 500 years in the future, as per my god cloud theory, but yeah, if humanity actually was able to make a green biotech, zero emissions, utopian version of Midgar, that would be so wholesome, man. That'd be so fulfilling, and it would also kind of symbolize, again, because of the way Aerith views Midgar as a reflection of the consciousness of the people, it would be like its most pure form, its most harmonious, in line with nature. It's most woke, it's most conscious. The cycle of death and rebirth again and again has served its purpose, and now it's no longer needed because unity has been achieved. That's why I think FF7 Remake Part 3, 4, 400, whatever the fuck it's going to be, ending. It needs to be teenage Marlene walking around. She started qualifying as a bioengineer, aka like an ecological scientist who works on the giant eco gardens of Midgar. It would be everything, man. Everything Aerith was teaching the kids at the flower garden, trying to give them the green thumbs. We see that on a blown up freaking scale, and as she's being all scientisty and working through these like bio gardens, she's just like humming Aerith's theme. Imagine it, soft and gentle, humming the theme, and then all of a sudden a voice we have never heard before, all powerful, all ethereal, just whispers into Marlene's ear out of nowhere. The voice of the planet being heard for the first time by a human being. Boom! Roll credits. Fade to frickin' black. We're done skis. Oh man, that'd be so perfect. I'm so mad, but that'd be so much better than the ambiguous, cliffhanging ending of original FF7, which I definitely don't think Square Enix is going to do. But yeah, so there we go. That's Norse mythology, technology. I'll just quickly say, because how can you not when it comes to reincarnation theory? I mean, one of the biggest cultures that integrate these kind of thought process is, of course, Hinduism. And all of the early primitive ideologies that has been born out from Mesopotamian, Sanskrit, early Greek and Roman, Babylonian, and surprisingly, just learning this week, to even roots in old nomadic, Aryan, Slavic sort of cultures, and they call it Leela. Another name for Leela is the cosmic sport or the divine play, and that essentially we go through all these lives. The exact word is the struggle of creatures across the cycle of life and death over and over again, each time thinning the veil of ignorance and illusion, which I could really see us doing in F7 Remake, man. Each cycle, not only fading the illusion of Sephiroth and the illusion that we're on with like the whispers and the natural evolution of Cloud from his like most confused identityless state to his most transcendent self-realized state. That same theme, again, it is for the entirety of humanity, from their early Shinra using the power, not giving a shit about the planet, to the awakening and realization of humanity that we've seen like Advent Children and beyond. Again, the destruction and rebirth themes of the black and white materia, all of that is Leela, and supposedly the cosmic intention of that is to purify love in all its forms. That's the reason for it. And now I go to the whole thing with Jessie being like this actress and Wedge's line.
Life's a stage and love's the play.
Whoa! Listen to that. What is that? That's you overthinking it, Pez. I don't know, man. It could be a hint at Leela. I mean, it would tie in so succinctly, but it even could tie into like anything. Like even Shakespeare said, "All the world's a stage." That was a monologue from one of his pastoral comedies called As You Like It, and he says, yeah, all the world's a stage, and that all men and women, they're merely players. They have their exits, their entrances, and that each person may play many, many parts in that lifetime. And get this, the parts that Shakespeare broke it down to was the 7 acts, or the 7 ages of man. 7 bleeding heck, that bloody number. 7 seconds, Cloud. What will you do with it? And this is why I'm going to round this theory off. So final point, just going back to what I was saying earlier in theory about how they've restarted the timeline very different, right? It's not just during the part 1. Someone blew my mind on Reddit. You might have seen me tweet this out, but even at the very start, the timeline has been drastically altered. Because, and I'll ask a simple question, where did Cloud sleep? Where did Cloud sleep prior to the first Mako bombing reactor. This blew my noodle, and supposedly the English translation made it far less obvious than the original Japanese, because when Cloud speaks to Mal, he makes it very clear he's only just arrived in the slums that day. And I mean, I suppose it even makes sense in English, because Tifa is only just showing Cloud an apartment to stay in now. So that begs the question, where the hell has Cloud been? If he had been around Sector 7, he definitely would have met Mal. And this is so hugely different from original, because Cloud had been there over a month. It was about 1 month prior to the first bombing run that Tifa finds Cloud ill at the train station. And it was during that whole month, pretty much, she was nursing him through his Moko poisoning, and how Barrett came to trust Cloud. I mean, not fully trust Cloud. Obviously, he just doesn't trust Cloud at the beginning, but enough to have him go along on a mission. Now, if we have Cloud only appearing 24 hours before the first bombing run, that's suspicious, man. Barrett trusting him after just that is real sus. So that begs the question, why change the timeline so significantly? Again, it's similar to changing those Midgars. It's subtle, but it's so obviously intentionally done that it has to raise the question, where was Cloud for that month? And I don't know if this could somehow tie into Cloud's Mako poisoning being much less. Again, originally he was going to be Mako poisoned out of his butt. Like, he looked really ill. People used to complain about the 2015 trailer. They'd be like, why does Cloud look so skinny? So skinny, so ill. And like, his eyes were ablaze with the green of Mako poisoning. Not so much in this remake version. Could these inconsistencies again be a hint that this is either happening in Cloud's head, his dream space, or this is a Zanarkand Midgar, a cognitive creation, a space in time reanimated by an infiltration, a violation of the Livestream? Maybe this really is all happening close to the heart of the planet. It does also perhaps bring up maybe the causal time loop theory of Zack, that's being that there is no repeat timelines or alternate timelines, it's a causal loop. So essentially Zack is in this timeline. When he's carrying Cloud to Midgar, yeah, he basically doesn't just drop Cloud off at the train station, like abandon him just to be ill, and instead actually looks after him, nurses him back to health. That of course would raise more questions, like why the hell then is Zack like off? Is he off hiding as a civilian? Is he undercover? Did he give his Buster Sword to Cloud? Because there obviously can't be two Buster Swords. I start thinking, then did Zack, was he the one who got like wedged to safety and like Biggs off of the pillar, and that's why we saw the stamp logos that represent Zack? Like he was guiding us from behind the scenes the entire time. Maybe, or it could be demonstrating to us another break in the logic, and again, the reincarnation, that the whole thing started again in the alleyway. That the timeline had just started up, just begun again, and that the characters, they're not even missing a beat. They're not even tripping up over these logic inconsistencies, even the obvious ones. They just don't get tripped up on it, because to them this is already happening, and in a sense it has already happened. They have already experienced these things, they have already met each other, and I feel like maybe that's why there's so much that could just be going unquestioned in this game. I mean, that's definitely intentionally, because we see the Cloud and the gang go into certain scenarios, and then the plot goes to there undoing some of their memories, like tweaking their minds, and like when the group went into deep ground and then afterwards they come out, they just sort of like shuffle on and don't really question what just happened. And we saw with Cloud the plot ghost kind of befuddled his brain, similar to the befuddlement that they did with Hojo, forgetting what he was about to say, losing his trail of thought after coming in contact with the Whispers. So there's like definitely interference from the planet that has access to all recorded memory, and I think that's why we're seeing these kind of inconsistencies. So yeah, that time frame one, I don't know, any of you have got a better theory on why Square would change Tifa meeting him a month ago at a train station to him just arriving in the slums now? Why do you think there might be two Midgars? Do you think my reincarnation theory logic sucks, or are you somewhat compelled? I really want to know in the comment section below. God damn, I can't wait for part 2 to come out and just blow all of this completely out of the water. But one thing I know from doing all of these series vids is Square Enix have set up so many succulent threads that they can pull from, so I'm really excited for this compilation going forward. Thanks very much, guys. I would so appreciate that subscribe, because we are closing on that 100k. Take it easy, peace, and I'll see you on the next video. Out.